In this video, we'll be going over how much money program managers make. Hey everyone, it's RION here from the Unblockers, where we talk about anything and everything program and project management. If you're new here and you like what you see, make sure to hit that like or subscribe button. Just remember that everything that we talk about on today's video can be found in the description down below. So let's jump right in. So you probably clicked on this video because you, just like many other people, and myself included, like money. And quite frankly, this is a question that I get from many individuals who are interested in becoming a program manager. How much money do they make anyway? It's a great question and also, quite frankly, unavoidable to talk about as well. So in order to get started, what we have to do is talk about some of the different factors that actually heavily affect and skew compensation for program managers and technical program managers as well. In addition, we'll keep it simple and straightforward and assume that we'll be searching for jobs in the United States. And in addition, we'll also lean towards the conservative side of estimates and observations because we know that everyone's experiences are going to be different. And also, for everyone else's benefit, the resources that we will use today are levels.fyi and glassdoor.com. So if you're interested in taking a look at some of the numbers yourself, you're very welcome to go into these websites and kind of plop in any of the numbers and factors that you're interested in seeing for yourself. Okay, first of the factors that influence compensation is going to be the industry that you work in. Whether you like it or not, depending on the industry you're in, some will pay more, some will pay less, some will pay meh. And from what I've observed so far, the program managers and TPMs that are working within financial services and also tech industry are going to typically be paid and compensated higher. That's just the way that the industry is. Okay, so a cursory search on Glassdoor for program managers working within the Bay Area, depending on the industry, yields a couple interesting results. If you're working in something like telecommunications, let's say for example an AT&T, typical base salaries for program managers there range around $102,000 per year. If you're in a consulting position, like let's say Accenture, typical rates will go at around $108,000. If you're in manufacturing, let's say you're in the Toyota of North America, your compensation appears to be right around $113K from what we're seeing. If you're in pharma, let's say you're working at McKesson, which is huge in supply chain and logistics for pharmaceutical companies, their comp will probably range around $113 to $115 starting off for program managers there. And then finally, if you're at Facebook, a FAANG company, your compensation will range around $130K. So if you're optimizing for financial gain and money, definitely keep this in mind. Depending on the industry that you work in will affect your total compensation. Another factor that influences base compensation and total compensation for program managers and TPMs is geographic location. I don't think that was a surprise to anyone, but depending on where you are, you'll be paid more or you'll be paid less. Some of the examples that we come up with are, let's say, for example, if you are in the Bay Area, let's say San Jose, program managers will earn on average around $142K. If you are in New York, slightly less cost of living, that comes out to around $135K. If you're in Boulder, Colorado, again, less than New York, your compensation will be around $110K for base salary. Let's say you're in Texas, let's say Austin, you're probably going to make around $105K. There's a couple things that drive the factor of geographic location. One of the biggest ones is going to be the cost of living. Another is the geographic vicinity to where many of these companies could be located or concentrated in. Obviously, the companies that are going to be opening, the larger companies that are going to be opening locations here are the ones that are going to be paying the most. In addition, there's also the competition for talent. So the more talent that there is, then we end up seeing supply and demand economics, where if there isn't enough talent, then they'll obviously start compensating more. One of the things that has thrown a wrench in all of this is remote work. And because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we suddenly noticed that many of these positions have gone remote, which is a boon for many workers that are suddenly now eligible to earn a lot more money from a lower cost of living wherever they are. But in addition, for those already making pretty high salaries and they decide to relocate, that could open them up to a situation where the company may choose to adjust their compensation commensurate to the cost of living. Okay, the next factor on this list that could affect your compensation is going to be the size of the company and the amount of funding that they have as well. One thing to note is if you are a private company or maybe you're a startup, you're obviously not going to be earning as much as, say, a publicly traded company, simply because of the amount of resources that may or may not be available to your company to use. The gist of it is that the larger the company, typically the higher the compensation as well. A quick Glassdoor search for multiple companies of different sizes yields some pretty interesting, though not unexpected results. So let's say, for example, that we're here in the Bay Area, we're working for a startup, and let's say that startup is pre-Series A, right? So let's say they've just have that seed fund, they haven't quite raised those first couple million required to grow and scale. If you're a program manager there, your compensation will probably be around 85K, which is obviously not market rate, but is obviously market rate for a company of that size and of that level of resources. If you're a mid-sized company, and so you're privately held, you're probably Series C and beyond-ish, maybe around 500-ish people or so, you can reasonably expect that your compensation for a program manager would jump up to around 110, 115,000. And if you're publicly traded and you're a large company, you're over 1,000, 2,000 people, then obviously your compensation would jump right back up to market rates, to what we were chatting about previously, depending on where you are and what company. But we can put that in around the range of like 130, 135K. Now, while getting compensated at $85,000 at a startup might not seem that appealing, you have to remember that the flip side of this is the rewards associated with the risk. You're going into a small scale company with very few resources, and obviously they're not going to be able to compensate you very much. However, on the flip side, the reward for the risk that you take on is tremendous. If that company ends up growing and scaling up to a publicly traded company, then all the money that you would have earned in the form of equity or restricted stock units, or even the intangible of a career ladder, going from an individual contributor technical program manager position suddenly to a director or a VP or a head of, whatever you want to call it, is an intangible, fringe benefit that would be part of your compensation as well. So there are trade-offs to make if you were to go to a smaller company in relation to a low-risk, safe, quasi-cushy position in a large, like 5,000, 10,000 person publicly traded company. Okay, the next thing on this list that can affect compensation for program managers is a little strange and somewhat hard to actually describe, but I'll do my best. It's company organization and culture. And when you ask yourself, how does a culture actually affect, or how does an organization affect compensation? There's a couple ways you can do it. I think for the sake of simplicity, in this particular video, we'll just go over one example, and we can look at that as, say, a form of profit sharing. Something like this could happen when you have your employees that are compensated based on a certain metric, and that metric is associated with, say, a customer metric, a initiative, or a direction of the company. Like, let's say, for example, we want to, increase revenue to a certain percentage, and then suddenly compensation would be related or at least commensurate to that. The interesting thing about that type of compensation is that the employees get to share in the success of the company. That success in turn tends to influence, coincidentally, the direction and the culture of the company further influencing the compensation to a degree. If you're interested in learning more about how compensation is directly affected by organization and culture, check out the link down below in the article that I left there. It's a really interesting read. A little long-winded, but they do have some interesting infographics and also pictures and graphs that show how it does affect company culture and compensation. Next up, of the things that affect compensation is going to be experience level and position. And by that, I mean how many years of experience you have and what level the program manager or TPM position is. Let's say, for example, you're searching around the career boards and you start to see associate or junior level TPM or program manager positions. Those compensation ranges are going to obviously be different from, say, a manager level or senior level, and also a principal level, or maybe even a director level. So let's go into some of those details now. One of the main things that drive the difference in compensation between the different positions is going to be the scope of responsibility. Obviously, the responsibility for, say, an associate level program manager is going to be vastly different from that of a senior or principal level. So a quick search on levels.fyi and Glassdoor yields a couple interesting results. If you are at an associate level, let's say again, you're searching in the Bay Area and you have around sub 3 years experience, we can reasonably expect your base compensation to be around $103,000. If you're a mid-level and you've got around 3 to 7 years worth of experience, then we can reasonably expect your compensation to be around 120K. And if you're at anything above that, 7 to 10 years of work experience, then your compensation jumps to around 130, 140K per year. If you're technical and you're applying to technical program manager positions, you can reasonably multiply that base salary by like 5 to 10-ish%, and that's the expected compensation for those that are of a technical background. The main difference with these positions is that obviously the individuals from these positions usually have a technical or an engineering background. Okay, so we've established a pretty good baseline and understanding for how much these PGMs and TPMs get paid. Let's bring it all together. Let's say that you're searching for program manager positions here in the Bay Area. You've got approximately 5 to 7 years worth of work experience, and let's say that you're also still an IC, an individual contributor. With that in mind, if you're a program manager looking for gigs, you can reasonably expect to get paid right around 120K. If you're a TPM, then we can expect you to get paid around 140K from a base compensation standpoint. So while the base salary is pretty attractive as is, there's also a bunch of other compensation benefits that you could encounter depending on the industry and the company that you work for. When you add the base compensation and the extra monetary compensation and benefits, you get what's called a total compensation. Let's go into detail around some of the things that could be part or found within total compensation. The first of these is equity, which is effectively shares or RSUs, restricted stock units, as part of a company. If they're equity, they could be given to you from either a public or private company, or think of like a startup basically giving you stock, company options or equity in the form or in lieu of compensation. Typically, this equity is vested over 4 years. What that means is, if they give you 100,000 shares, then 25,000 will vest in that first year, followed by month to month to month, you'll get a percentage of the remaining 75%. That obviously depends on the company. Also, if you do agree to work at a startup and they, compensate you in the form of RSUs or equity in lieu of money, do your homework. Ask the questions, do your due diligence to make sure that there is some level of value that you are comfortable with and that you understand the risks going into that startup. Bonus. In addition, many companies will offer bonuses as well. Bonuses are usually granted on a yearly basis. Some may split it up into multiple times of the year and could be tied to the fiscal performance of the company as well. This tends to range per company, but at any tech company, you can reasonably expect it, a large tech company anyway, you can reasonably expect bonuses to be around 10 to 20%. For the sake of simplicity and being conservative, we'll go for 15% here. Sign-on bonus. Another thing that companies can offer to try and alleviate some of the risk involved with if you were to go to an early stage startup. I've even seen larger and mid-sized companies offer sign-on bonuses if the employee or the candidate that they want is really, really technical and super niche and very unique. So this is typically awarded upon when you start, or given some condition, maybe you stay there for 90 days and then you get a percentage of it. But obviously after the first year, it's just a sign-on bonus, right? You get it. It's a one and done deal. Okay, fringe benefits. These are some of the benefits that are somewhat intangible, but I think to some degree can be included in your total compensation, depending on what your values are. These are things like free food, healthcare, 401k matching, which is free money. You should always do the 401k matching if they offer it. Let's see here. Some of it could be education reimbursement, transportation subsidy, anything like that. So make sure to factor that in personally when you're evaluating compensation packages as well. Okay, so let's bring it all together. Again, let's make the assumption that you're looking for jobs in the Bay Area. You are searching for program manager positions here at large tech companies. You have around 5 to 7, maybe 8 years worth of experience. We can reasonably place your base salary at around 140K. And then after that, we can take a look at equity. Let's say, again, for the sake of simplicity, we're going for $40,000 vested over 4 years. We split that up to around $10,000 per year added to your base salary. And then we go into the bonus. Again, for the sake of simplicity, we'll shoot for 15%, which comes out to around another $21,000 per year. And then we go onto a sign-on bonus. So let's say you get $30,000 lump sum upfront. But for the sake of this exercise, let's just go ahead and split that up into 4, and we'll just assume that was part of your comp for the first 4 years. That comes out to around $7,500. The grand total of all of these things is $178,500. That's not even including fringe benefits anyway. Oh boy, that is a lot of money. Remember folks, I want to make sure that you take everything I say here in this particular video with a grain of salt. This is obviously only my observations from what I saw within levels.fyi and Glassdoor. Make sure to do your own research and perform your own due diligence. And that's all we've got today, folks. If you like what you saw today, then please hit that like and consider subscribing to the Unblockers, where we talk about anything and everything program and project management. If you're interviewing soon and you're looking for a structured guide on how to interview for program manager roles at these tech companies, the Unblockers offers a structured interview course that you can take and find down in the description below. In addition, we also offer a free newsletter that is located, you guessed it, down in the description below. That's all for today. We'll catch you next time on the Unblockers.